We want to talk about Fairstein, Linda Fairstein. The question is whether she was fair or not.
Hell no. Oh, no. I can't even go two different ways with that. That article that she put in the paper after all this stuff comes out over here. And what for?
Hold on.
No.
Let's bring it up there.
She comes over here and she's talking. She brings back all of this stuff. She's like, well, he said X, Y, and Z. Of course, these things were said after the. These things are said after the fact. You had no conclusive evidence, and you don't have this. You don't have any character or moral fiber within you. You didn't have to say anything. You didn't have to say anything at this particular juncture, and you're going to come out and do. You can't prove anything, but you can sow more doubt, right? You can't prove anything, but you can come over and try to save your art, so you can come over and write a couple of more novels, and for what? You know, at the end of the day, it's the same thing I said. You have a rapist and murderer who can tell the truth, and you can't come over here and say, you know what, I got it wrong. You get out of here with that.
Look, all right, so the whole problem with Fairstein, I think you should probably rearrange this. Fairstein basically was the prosecutor for the case, the main prosecutor for the case, the one who was pushing this case forward. Helped to develop the narrative, or she got the narrative from the police and then worked with it. It's the elements that they say that she said she was not involved in the very beginning.
No, we can't do this. We can't say that part because that's her deposition.
Yeah.
Like everybody has folded when they were deposed. None of them they all said they had a small part. They were just starting.
All right, so the point.
The point is, we're not defending anyone on
right,
there. She was involved in it, and
all right, so we can say that. But what we're saying is that. All right, so she was involved in it, but she's became famous because she prosecuted or helped to prosecute this.
That's what. If she wasn't involved, she wouldn't be as famous
right.
as she was.
She started a special. Exactly. Special Victims Unit, Law and Order, SVU. She got books.
This was the conviction that made her career.
Exactly.
Anybody, just about everybody attached to it in law enforcement.
Look, and the problem here, if she would just say, we made a mistake, I think a lot of people will say, you know, in retrospect, possibly the way we went about it was one thing. But she's held her guns and said, hells no, these guys are still guilty. Even if they weren't guilty of that specific crime, they were guilty of other crimes. You know, and that's what's gotten a lot of people upset about her, in that she has not at least admitted to saying, hey, something went wrong here in the process and what she did. Am I being too even keel for you guys?
No,
I think that's straight up. If you made a mistake, you make a mistake.
The way that she goes about it is like, okay, Mateus Reyes, he confesses. Okay, so there must have been a sixth person, and if three other guys confessed, I guess there were 9. There were 12 people there. Yeah. It's. Just the lack of substance on her as a bleeding human being is so hard. It is so hard to take at this point because you obviously got this wrong. And it's like, well, I may have been wrong about this, but they were in the park doing something. Everybody else who was assaulted or went to the police, all the perpetrators were identified. Yes. Okay, with all of them. And these boys were never linked. Okay, they were never linked to any of those particular things. You have no physical evidence. You have no accusation of them doing anything else. And the last straw you want to grasp onto is sowing that little bit of doubt that you can. Well, they had to be. If they were in the park, they had to be doing something. Right. Okay, it wasn't that. And this is a thing that always heats me about anytime I remember the story. Is that again? I remember what it was to be a boy. It was a great fun time. Okay, you did stupid stuff, but I didn't have to pay for it. Okay, I had my run-ins with the police as well. Didn't have to get carted off to Sparfoot. Didn't have to end up doing this type of stuff. People looked at you like a human being, okay, and said, okay, he's dumb thing, stupid thing. At the end of the day, maybe a slap on the wrist, and you go over here. The big person who disciplined me, my parents, right. Mother or father. These guys get that's all taken away with overnight in a heartbeat. It's taken away. You're less than an object, okay? Less than an object at this point, and you can't get that back. We talk about preserving, the sanctity of being a kid, of not being molested, okay, of not being forced to work, all of these other type of things for children. And here you have these guys who are victimized in the worst way. Okay, in the worst possible way for making what amounts to a poor judgment. And you can't come out and have any sort of character whatsoever, okay, to acknowledge that you got it wrong, okay, at least for their frame of mind, because I'm certain if it was me, there'd still be that part of me saying, look, you're still out there pushing this narrative and somebody's gonna believe it. Somebody's just thinking somehow I got lucky Okay, and that's the reason why we're out over here. Or there was still some conspiracy, and he's saying, well, you know what, since I'm going to be here anyway, I'll take the rap for all 6 of us. Because that's the story that you're pushing, rather than just coming out and being straight at the end of the day.
Okay, we
There's
got
nothing
that.
else to gain.
So, what do you think about that?
I mean, that's one of the hard things right now is that there's this, whenever there's a film
About Fierstein?
about a true story, about a true story, then you have these voices that come out to try to say, well, this is now fiction because, and they're pointing out such small bits that don't relate to, I mean, it relates to the story, but saying, this happened at this point, saying a timing difference in a movie, which is, it is a movie.
Didn't they do a timing difference in a timeline for the kids?
That's the thing.
So
Like, so you have this thing, you have this person, and the fact is that she didn't lose, she didn't get canceled in 2004. She didn't get canceled in 2013. She was able to be deposed and say that, hey, she was in front of the exonerees while she was being deposed, saying that I just did some calls, I wasn't really that involved, this, that, and the other. So she had to face them when she said she wasn't really that involved. But then she has all this literature. There's even on those TV dramas about the case. So
Yeah.
all the stuff that she was involved in, and to now have the Wall Street Journal to back her, it's like all this.
Wait, the Wall Street Journal is Rupert Murdoch's paper. I mean, he always goes against these things. So let's call it what it calls. You know what I'm trying to say?
I want to cite these publications that are going. Even CNN had one of the police saying, "Look at the tapes." So I'm fine. I'm okay with her being canceled. But the thing is, it would be better if you did apologize, and maybe everything gets taken away. But even if the jogger herself were able to talk to these men and say, you know what, I had nothing. Ultimately, she went through this. She was a victim of this.
She's a victim.
And she has the police saying, and Raymond Santana says that she was victimized twice by Matias Reyes, and these police saying that, hey, once the DNA comes in, it's going to be a slam dunk, and they're like, hey, it was like a fingerprint on the fingerprint, which is total nonsense.
Yeah.
So once you get to the fact that you have a thing where people want to hold in their positions when we don't have to. The courts try to get them out and move it away and try to bury it. They're like, let them out. Let's let Raymond Santana's in for something else. Get him out of that by Christmas. Let's get him out of here and leave. They've even talking about, hey, we'll settle, we'll figure out things. But they went federal, and that's when New York City was like, oh my gosh. So, I mean, everything that she could have said, she could have gone. New York City could have gone to court, and they could have fought against it. Because they keep saying, oh, we had one other bit, but that meant that they were going to do their best to connect Matias Reyes to
But the question is, I mean,
And they tried to do that.
My problem though is that even if she really believes they committed something, which seems she does, is what they experienced commensurate with the crime that I'm not talking about the rape crime, but she's talking about the assaults in the.
See,
in the
that's
thing. That's not
besi-
even close to what she.
That's besides. That's
No,
besides.
it is
the
beside,
point
but
for
I'm
me.
just trying to say that she's trying to say that they did other things.
Oh,
but
they're still going with the pack. She's still
right, she's doing the pack,
pack,
the pack thing, and I'm saying that's BS because the cop when they caught all of them says, you know what, we're gonna put them in family.
You
court.
can't even prove the wolf pack because they didn't know each other.
Yeah.
Okay, you can't even prove the wolf pack at this. You can't prove wolf pack. You can't prove that they operated individually. You can't prove that these 5 operated together. You have no story. Okay, and nobody's begging you for it. Oh, I'm so sorry. Look, but you can admit that you got it wrong.
Yes.
That's all
You
we
can
said.
admit that you got it wrong.
I mean,
Was it Mike Sheehan who was on? I think he's on the Pix 11. Like he's still. All of the cops have stayed as firm as outside of.
none of them have been. They've all.
Only the prosecutor who had what's his name, Morgenthau. He's the only one that sort of had his assistant write up the thing that said these guys should be exonerated.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that they've gotten back. And De Blasio, who did something which was light, which was a tweet saying, hey, I'm for.
Well, he's getting elected, and he wanted to make sure he got
And
that.
they
But
were like-
but it was
they-
right.
they-
Yeah, I'm not gonna not
Still-
do it.
it was still right, 'cause
It was
you
the
had
right
Bloom-
thing to do.
Because the Bloomberg administration and Bloomberg being in charge, in charge of it, was said, look, we'll drag this out, and they honestly believe they could take it to court and win. That's the only reason why they would do it. They honestly believe that, look, we can come over here and do
I never
that.
understood that whole reasoning behind.
Other than that, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to drag it out as long as they
mean,
do.
'cause
I mean, I understand why you do that, But if the whole idea is eventually this is going to, I mean, you can only drag it out so long. You're going to get to court.
But how do you win? How do you think you're going to win?
I have no idea.
They want to go to court. They want all the evidence. They've seen all the evidence, and that's the thing.
They were trying
New
to
York
suppress
City
it.
does not want the evidence and
To
all
come
the
out.
stuff that's being said.
Because if they lose, other cases will be
If you
affected
drag
by
it out, you can only drag it out. In any case, you can only drag it out so long. Then you have to. Then it has to go.
No, then,
then
you,
it has
you
to.
could make a deal.
No, I'm saying if you don't
could-
make a deal.
No, but I'm saying you can drag it up long enough so that you're like, all right, the person's they're suffering, and they're like, you know what, we'll just do this.
Let me try
You
again.
know what I'm trying to say?
If you, the legal system makes it so, depending on your skill with the legal system and your money, that you can delay getting into a courtroom, what seems like forever. But eventually, you will have to go to court. Okay. Now, if you're thinking, okay, I can't win this, okay, but I'm just gonna, drag it. Eventually, you're gonna have to get to that point, and you're gonna have to get to that point anyway. Now, from what I was reading, it seemed like these guys were like, no, we honestly believe that if we go based on the merit, we could actually win this, which is a head scratcher at the end of the
they're
day
saying
because
that
you don't have anything on your
those are
side.
legally admissible. They're saying they're legal and admissible confessions. The question,
No,
were
but
the,
no, they
were the
said that
confessions
they were
thrown out?
Cleared. They've already
Right.
cleared themselves. 'Cause
Right.
They said there was no wrongdoing in the confessions.
Right.
So that's the first part. And then they want more time with Mateus Reyes. They want to sit around and do the same thing they did before, hammer him and say, connect these.
Because it was the same thing you were telling me. They went because Raymond Santana's in prison, and after Mateus Reyes, confesses, they go get him while he's in prison, and they put some pictures out in front of him. Mateus Reyes being one of them, and they're like, "Hey, you recognize anybody?" So even at that time, they were still trying to make that connection. He looks at the pictures, and he's, I don't know any of these guys. And then to his credit, he's like, you know what? I don't know any of these guys, and I don't want to talk to you anymore. I don't want to talk. So he's like, look, I'm out of here at this
But he
point.
was an adult, so.
Well, obviously, he's like, look.
But they've been trying. They have paperwork that's going to saying like connect them to Reyes. So that at some point the paperwork will get out. But the fact is that they've been standing on that they've exonerated themselves to say that all of the
We investigated ourselves and found ourselves to be above
and
board.
when I say that to people are like, oh, what do you mean? It's like, no, I'm not saying it's right. I'm like, that's what they said.
This movie is very important because we believe that it's a picture of time of New York, which definitely is historical, and we believe that things have moved on. But unfortunately, many of the things that help they caught these boys into the system still exist, and it's something that a lot of young men and their families should be watching. One of the things I wanted to point out in the end is that one of the greatest strengths that these kids had were their parents, particularly their mothers, who no matter what, a lot of these issues that were going on, they constantly believed in their family and constantly helped to push it. And that to me is one of the most important things. And no matter what, as long as you have those who believe in you and those who help come out there and help you, you can overcome almost any injustice.
And this is the hard thing which you see, which was real for me in the story, is seeing how parents struggling with this situation, hearing this stuff about their kids, not hearing it from an authority, the police. So this is one of the hard things about this story is that once you get the call that your kid has done something, and you're just worried about that thing or just one mistake, and that's the thing in a lot of black and brown families, that one mistake that can take you out of your future. And this is what this story is sort of this is telling. And they lost a lot of their lives, and now they have families. It's great to see that some of them have large families, and it's a powerful thing of the human condition where some are still. You can see Corey still struggling, you see Antron still struggling with this, but they become upstanding citizens despite all those years in prison.
And Cal?
Well, for me, it was only a human being can recognize another human being, and with the boys here, that humanity was just taken away overnight. And a reminder of that, regardless of what the situation is, we still have to regard people as human beings. We still have to regard them as living, breathing people, and not just things to be scattered away at the end of the day. Particularly since human beings make mistakes, and the biggest mistake that they made was to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. But then you have the NYPD, and the biggest mistake that they made was to charge them with these crimes. So that loss of humanity, that loss of childhood, again, really strikes me, and that's something that having worked with young men, having worked with young people, it's something that you really, try to go out and do your best to, preserve, because those are the good people of the future. Those people who are able to maintain that child quality, that optimism, that purity, if you will, and preserve it as much as possible going forward. So it's something that I do share because we have to do our best. I think, as just people regarding each other as individuals, as living and breathing. In Corey Wise's story, when he has that corrections officer who says, no, if I had a kid in here regardless, I would still want him to treat him as a human being.
Exactly.
And that was the biggest thing for me. At some point, they stopped being human beings and they just became less than an object, just something that needed to be achieved. And then after that, the hell with whatever would come later. That is for me the biggest thing, because the mistakes gonna happen. The mistakes will happen. People do, and I'm not talking about crimes. I'm talking about a mistake. Yeah. And the biggest thing that can happen in that situation is to be regarded as someone who is still worthy of, forgiveness, of help, of all those things that we still need before we made the mistake, and and afterwards. And just overall, just a very poignant story. Very poignant story.
And I agree with you on both of you on all those things. I think one thing we need to probably reemphasize is that, we don't believe that all policemen or all prosecutors or all correction officers, but the system failed them on so many levels, and we believe that these people, we believe that the cops as well as the correction officers and prosecutors help to uphold the system that we are in. Yeah. You know what I'm trying to say? And most of them are fine. But we need to weed out the bad apples, those who are biased, those who are indifferent, those who treat others as objects, like Kyle was saying. And that's all we're saying. And this story, unfortunately, is the what do you call that famous story from in France where he sent the guy to Guyana. And
Jean Valjean with Les Miserables?
Not Miserables. The one where the guy was sent to prison in the Caribbean and he had to suffer there. And then the Turkish one. These are all...
I don't recall.
So erase all that. You know what I'm trying to say? But the point is just that, we believe in the system also. This is not to be downing every cops and every it's just that we just have to get rid of those who allow the biases to creep in.
Well, you also have to think about it, and this is one of the harder things with public opinion, is that when a crime happens and you find a possible suspect, is that you have to defend yourself in court, I don't, even the people who are guilty of the crimes, this system is put in place so you can defend yourself and hopefully, if you didn't do it, be a free person. But there's so many cases beyond even the exonerated 5 that these things that people find out, or these false confessions, or like these people being forced in. We have to remember, even if you have done it's a criminal mischief, like the fact that you have your father and your parent being there for you the entire time can help your case.
Yes.
So it's like the fact that they're saying, hey, waive everything, like this, that, and the other, we will help you out, is not going to help you out. You have to protect yourself as much as you can, not speak, wait for your parents, wait for some sort of legal person.
And even then, they need to get people, because you have the other situation where the sister comes and she signs off because he's like, no, I just want to get out of here. Just get me out of here.
And they lied to her. Let's just call it what it is. They lied to her. I mean, one thing lying to her.
That's the thing. It's okay in this sort of case for them to lie. And that's what you have to remember in this thing. It's not me, it's people who know the law saying that as far as getting an interrogation and getting getting the confession, they are doing whatever they can to get the truth out. And that's what it's hard to say they lie, they do all that stuff. And in this case, it was a lie. They created a lie and they created a story instead of following it to get something that didn't get any shred of evidence that helped this case out besides their own confessions.
So basically, don't say anything, know your rights, and look for those in your family to help you out, I guess, as best as you can.